How are you doing? It's Martin from Gardens for Life. I'm just here to show you the new garden for the first time, and don't mind the flies. They're very annoying this time of the year. It's certainly semi-wet summer, and it's warm enough for them, and I'm even using some of this iced tea or lemon balm, and I'm sort of just keeping on rubbing that onto my neck and face just to keep the flies away. I even have a leaf of lemon balm on the camera just to keep the flies away from the lens and the microphones. Otherwise you'll be able to hear them buzzing. So just to show you, so this used to be just a field. I'll show you a picture of it. So this is a new garden. It's about 150 square meters. We set it up in a matter of about 2 weeks, and with the help of our neighbour's tractor. So overall this new garden is more of a production based area, and we got full sun, as you can see here. Well, at the moment the sun is not shining because it's cloudy. However, this is the south side, so we got full sun here, and this is right in the middle of our new garden. So all around the outside we're going to be building a food forest, or a forest garden, and we're basically just using this area here as both a holding area for plants, and we'll get to that stage, and we're producing some tubers and some vegetables for ourselves as well. So here's some runner beans. This was the first thing that was planted at the new garden probably about 6 weeks ago now, and you can see they're doing okay. They haven't really climbed the poles. These have been built from hazelwood from a field down the road, and underneath of the trellis we are also growing 2 different types of kales. Might as well, even if the beans cover the trellis completely and shade out the underneath, the kale will do fine, and even by the time the first frost hits, the beans will die off, and kale will actually keep growing. There's red Russian kale on the left hand side, and some Portuguese kale right there. That's perennial, so that'll keep growing for years and years, and it'll eventually take over the space. It's all about using all the dimensions of the space that you have in your garden. There's a great model for that. It's the 7 layers of the forest, and we do have woody components and herbaceous perennials planted here as well. So this garden is a little different from all the other gardens that we've been doing, especially around our house. Normally we like to plant polyculture gardens, where we closely plant together all kinds of different plants to use up all of the various dimensions of space and to use all of the sunlight that you can get. And if you use all of the layers of space, you don't have any issues with weed control, in particular if you have a mulched garden system anyway. And we like to, this area being production based or production oriented, and it's more of a holding area for plants that we have coming out of the nursery, we like to interplant a few little islands of basically wildlife flowers and herbs as well, and a few fruits, and just very few trees in this case now. But see, here we have a currant. This is a tayberry, so you can see here that's already tip layering, which is great. We're going to get a new plant out of that. These are aronia berries, so they'll all grow into sort of fairly large bushes. Here's another aronia bunch, there's another group of aronia, and these are celery. Just had them from last year, still in large pots, so I just planted them out for the insects to have the flowers, and it helps to have these little insect islands, as you like to call them, just more plants that attract beneficial insects to the garden and help to keep all of our crops actually safe. And this is a sage plant. There's a lilac, and here's a mullein. Actually, one of our mulleins has flowered at the house. I must show that to you guys. Here is a feverfew, very small, but that was only a rooted cutting from this year. And I'll show you here, there's another little island. This is a black mallow. It's a beautiful plant when it flowers. This is a fig. That's the peretta. That's a very large fig, kind of like a size of a small pear. And there's another fig, that's a green variety. Another feverfew. And here's some mullein that's actually going to flower. So it has kind of it's going to grow into about probably a 2-meter stalk, and it'll flower for a long period of time, maybe about a month and a half or so. This is ginkgo tree. It's not doing too well. Maybe it's not taken to the compost very well. That's underneath these wood chips, but hopefully it'll come back. It might bounce back yet. It's a 1-year-old ginkgo tree. And here is a red currant plant. I always put labels on things, at least for future propagation anyway. And here's more great mullein. This is a marshmallow plant. It's also kind of a herbaceous perennial plant, and it'll die back in the winter, but it'll come back strong and grow into a flowering bush every year. So all around the outside of the garden we have pumpkin plants, and we're hoping that these will actually, the vines of the pumpkins like these will actually trellis off onto the path, which is all around the outside of the perimeter of the garden, and it is the barrier for the weeds and grasses, so that they don't grow into the compost, which is under the wood chips where the plants are. Here we have only wood chips and plastic underneath, and check out what it looks like. It's been here for 6 weeks now. So fairly did the job, and it's keeping the grasses out. We use this builder's plastic, or not builder's plastic, this is covers for construction timber. Yeah, so you have a bit of a path all around the garden, and you can easily add on to it as well on the other side of the path, so you can make the next garden already, but you're always going to remain with the path. We're not planning on ever planting things here where we have the plastic put down. So there's about just under a meter of plastic here all around the outside, and you can still use the space with your vines trellising along, and you can also use tip layering plants to actually grow into this area, which is what we're planning on doing here. We have 20 of these thornless blackberries, plenty of them there, and we're hoping that they'll grow bigger and then tip layer into the path, at least onto the side of the path here. So you could put down a rock here and it'll actually start rooting right there in that spot. You can put a little bit of compost down. You can always dig a bit of a hole here and put down a small bit of compost for the plant, and then just put down a rock. We're going to do that, and we'll show you videos of it later, and it's in theory going to be very successful because of, well, we've got previous experience with tip layering plants, alright, and it's quite easy to do, and hopefully we'll turn these 20 blackberry plants into many more over the next year and even after that. So things have really taken off in the last 2 or 3 weeks, and all of this has been planted up to about 2 weeks ago, and you can see here we've actually got courgettes, and I was hoping we do, but I didn't even realize there's some yellow courgettes, and plenty of pumpkins too. There's oca here. These are strawberries and cream. It's purple oca. Here's some yarrow. This is more of a holding area for these plants, and that is cloth of gold. It's a lovely golden yarrow, and all these different rare varieties of oca that I got from a friend in Holland who has a rare vegetable garden, and he agreed to swap some seeds or some tubers last winter, which was great. And I'll put a link for his website down in the description. This is another marshmallow plant. It's good to plant the odd insectary plant in between the rows of vegetables and tubers, and this is going to attract beneficial insects once it's flowering. So it's perennial as well. And here's some feverfew between the pumpkins. Some more. Always a good idea to interplant things, especially marigold. I don't have any at the moment, but we will. We have some growing there at the moment. And you can see the runner beans are doing okay. And here's a lavender, or excuse me, that's a lilac tree, small one. And here's some yacon. New Zealand red is the variety. We have a video of how we planted that as well. I must check and see. Yeah, this planting density here is much too close for yacon, really. You could do with more space around them, but because we're going to run out of space in this garden, at the moment we're not going to bother. It's mostly just for multiplying the propagation material, so we have more plants next year. And the tubers, of course, they're delicious, and we'd like to eat some of them. And one day we might have enough to make our own yacon sugar syrup from the tubers, which is quite a delicacy. It actually contains no sugar, but it is sweet. So most diabetic foods actually contain yacon. And here's another one of these runner beans. Kind of give them a hand, just to show them, give them an idea of where to climb up. So here's an apios plant. We have a few of them here. Here's another one. It's a ground nut, it's also known as. It's actually it's just a tuber, and it is perennial. So here we've got a few different varieties of Jerusalem artichoke, and we got 2 labels for each cluster of plants. This is road red, so they're doing okay. Hopefully we'll get some tubers out of it this year. And it's Herman, and this is Chinese artichoke. Sorry, not Chinese artichoke, Chinese, it's a Chinese sunchoke, anyway, Chinese variety of artichoke. And these are the white truffle. They're probably doing the best. That's 2 crates of tubers that we planted here directly. And here's a lovely Portuguese kale plant. Check out how quick that grew. I mean, it's a substantial enough plant, and it's only been here for probably about 5 or 6 weeks at the most. Here's an apple tree we grew from seed. It's about 1.5 feet tall now. It's been in a pot for a year, so that doesn't help it. Here's a wood mallow plant with its lovely flowers. Definitely great for the insects, and the leaves are edible as well, same as all the mallows. And here's more pumpkins all along the edge. Another Portuguese kale. We have plenty of tubers here. So these are red oca, and here is more of the strawberries and cream, purple oca. See here, more yacon, and another set of yacon here. And here we have some mashua tubers, which are supposed to climb up a trellis, which is not here yet. Did not get a chance, same as those trellises there, but we didn't get a chance to build one yet. It's okay though, the plants are doing fine. They'll grow on the ground happily, no problem at all, with no maintenance. And here we have some mallow, and this is a zebra variety, or a variety called zebra. Check out the flowers. Quite different from all the other mallows, like the wood mallow and marsh mallow and all those. But it is mostly ornamental, this plant. So, but has it grown quickly? It's absolutely vigorous. And there's about 20 plants in that little cluster there. So next winter we're going to dig them up and spread them. Maybe pot up a few of them, or maybe even send them on the post. Bare root. So here's another little cluster of yacon. We have a lot of different varieties now. We have about 4 varieties of yacon now, but we're only starting them off yet. So here's this is sweet corn. A few rows of sweet corn. It's mostly rows because when you use the rake, it's easier to brush away the wood chips in a row, and then you can plant a whole bunch of them in one go. And these ones I'm going to compare to the ones that I kept in the greenhouse for an extra 2 weeks, because these were actually planted out 2 weeks ago, and the ones I have in the van, hang on, I'll show you now. Now these corn plants here are much bigger, because I kept them in the greenhouse and I repotted them into 1 litre pots. So they're a lot more substantial. I'm sure they're going, I mean, the idea was to keep them in the greenhouse for a little longer, just so they grow quicker for a while. And maybe it worked, maybe not, but we had too many corn plants anyway. Still have too many. So these ones here are in 1 litre pots, so they're kept in the greenhouse for 2 extra weeks. So we're hoping that they might have got an extra week or 2 of growth out of them, out of being in there where it's warmer. And you can see here, if you don't include the pot, it is a good bit bigger, alright. It's about nearly twice the size of it. And so I'm going to plant these out. We'll see if they do better than the other ones. And we even have one set of corn plants in a 15 litre bucket as well. And we'll see how they do. We keep them in the greenhouse until they're done. And here's another trellis. This is for the peas, so it's not quite as tall. It's only about 2 meters tall. Again, with the red Russian kale in the middle, because it might as well grow in the shade, and it'll be fine. We'll probably harvest that between now and the winter anyway, and we keep some of it for the springtime so that it'll flower. We like to keep all of our brassicas alive over the winter and then let them flower the next spring. That'll attract a lot of the insects, especially early on in the season, and it'll make for great pollinator food as well. So same as the willows as well. It's all very early bee food and other insects food as well. So the peas are doing fine. They're actually the ones called forage peas, which we got from Cork, from Future Forest Farms. And well, we've been keeping these peas going for several generations now. Several generations of plants, that is. So about 3 years now. So, and here's a square meter of potatoes. We have a video especially just on that, which we will release later on in the season when they're doing better, maybe even after the harvest. So we'll see what we get out of it. We planted a few too many for this one little area, about 20 chitted potatoes, and these are in the ground for about 2 weeks now, and you can see they're doing very well. Certainly have never sprayed any potatoes for blight in our lives anyway, or in any of our gardens, and never had any issues with blight. and I think it's mostly down to having a healthy soil life. And this patch of ground, this whole garden here, is still relatively fresh, so the mushroom compost that's being used here as a rooting medium has been steamed before it came out of the mushroom factory or the mushroom tunnel, and so there was basically no life in it anyway, and no worms. So we're going to populate it very lively, especially with all the different plants that have been planted here. They all would have come in pots, and they all would have brought in a bit of the soil life that we have out at our gardens at the house anyway. So, and it'll spread from there. We also planted a whole bunch of mushroom spawn in various different spots out here. Let's see, did our wine cap mushroom spawn that we planted here about 3 weeks ago, did it actually take? And it did indeed. Look at that. You can see the white little kind of strands there. That's the mycelium. That's basically the main body or the rooting body of the mushroom plant. And the mushroom itself, when it pops out of the ground, is only the fruiting body, as they say. And hopefully we'll end up with a nice few flushes of wine cap out of this garden now every year. So once the conditions are right, they just pop up. And it'll take about probably half a year to a year for that mycelium to populate this entire area. We planted about 2.5 kilos of spawn into various different spots here. So we'll see, it should spread from there. And so we have a few more things to plant as well. A few more oca plants there, a few more corn, some kohlrabi. And here's more Portuguese kale. It's doing very well here. So always delighted to see it doing well. Some of the pumpkins did get eaten by the slugs. Not very many though. I think we have about, could very well be about 70 or 80 pumpkin plants planted all around, because we're going to have them all trellis out away from the garden in order to save space, and we'll use the other space in the garden here for other purposes. And usually Michael Pilarski is actually a great gardener. He's also a herbalist as well. He has some videos on YouTube. He has the pumpkin patch, always a row of pumpkins along the edge of the garden, and has it take over the grasses and weeds and kind of contain them that are just at the border or bordering the garden itself. So the pumpkins help to smother the grass a little bit, at least shade it out anyway, so it doesn't take over. Here is some kohlrabi. I've never grown it before. If anyone has any advice on how to grow kohlrabi or how many months it takes to form a bulb, please let us know in the comments. Be very helpful. We have two different colors. It's the same variety, but two different colors, white and purple. I forget what the name of the actual variety is, but it's supposed to be a good one. Here's another patch of potato, and they have definitely grown quite substantially here. Well, especially with full sun. They're already flowering, but it's probably a bit late in the year, I suppose. I should have planted these a lot earlier, but I just wasn't ready. The garden wasn't ready yet, and we have potatoes planted in other places in our gardens, but here in this garden we basically have only been planting. About 4 weeks ago we started planting this up. Oh, maybe five weeks probably. The runner beans were the first thing to go in, then the peas, then the kale, then the tubers, mashua, oca, yacon, and pumpkins, and then the kohlrabi was last actually, and then before that was the corn. Oh yeah, the potatoes in between. So and then we had some woody things here like the aronia berry and all of that. But yeah, so here's a lavender, I always say lavender, a lilac bush, so that'll grow. Here is some red fusio Jerusalem artichoke or sunchoke, always a very popular one. A lot of people are looking for these in the winter. And here's another corner of mixed planting. There's a feverfew plant, a lot of kohlrabi, some oka. Here's a ginkgo tree, ginkgo biloba, which is also known as the maidenhair tree. It's a medicinal tree from Japan. It's actually one of the only plants that survived the Holocaust at the time, and it is a great tea. It makes for a great tea to increase your memory capacity. You can get more circulation to your brain by drinking it. And here's some strawberries. I'm going to be transplanting a lot more strawberries in the future. Well, I got delayed with that a little bit, and they're already fruiting, so I leave them where they are at the moment and let them multiply first. The other strawberries are doing very well at the house, so I'm going to transplant quite a few strawberries into this area yet over the next year, well, at least next winter. And here is the nasturtiums. I'm hoping they'll grow bigger and then climb this IBC water tank. I'm going to give them a bit of a trellis here, a few sticks. And so this is one of the IBCs, and we filled it up with water and brought it down here with the tractor. This is rainwater, and we were going to use it to water the garden, but it's not even necessary with the wood chip covering, with the mulch. All the plants here have been doing fine, even when it wasn't raining for a week, which doesn't happen very often here in Ireland. And I thought, sure, it's better to have the water here in case there's another drought like last year. There was a 40-day drought last year in June, and this year it wasn't too bad. It was only about a week at a time of no rain. And yeah, sure, even the small plants are doing fine, as you can see. So you have a tap here, and you put the watering can underneath, and it fills up in just a few seconds. And I thought, sure, might as well keep the water here just in case. And we've also started up a little bit of a holding area, because the nursery at home, as if you've seen the other video or some of the other videos, the nursery is getting quite cramped now. There isn't that much space, only about 1/10 of an acre, and we have another wave of plants actually coming out of the greenhouse now. So soon, maybe about 4 weeks from now, they'll have to be repotted. And so we're going to use this area here as a bit of a holding space, and we're certainly going to need water to keep those plants alive. Any plants in pots, you just gotta have them watered. Keep them watered nearly every day if you want them to grow. If you want to just hold them, you gotta water them probably at least every 3 days in the summer. Otherwise you're going to get some dieback of the leaves. So here is a little patch of oka, white oka, that we've planted, and we even have a video of those putting them in trays and then planting them out. And then we're going to weigh the harvest of this little patch when the harvest time comes, probably after the first couple of frosts in October, possibly start of November. And we said that whoever comes closest at guessing the weight of the harvest of this little patch of oka will get a sample posted out to them. So find the video, and you can find it on our channel, and just leave a comment. We're also showing last year's harvest from a pot and from a plant, an oca plant grown in the ground as well. So could be any number of kilos, we don't know. Hopefully 10 or 20, we don't know that. But anyway, take your guess and be in for a chance to win. So overall this garden has been a great success so far. It's only very young yet, and we're going to well, leave it growing for another while and plant up whatever spaces are kind of in between here. You can see there's a bit of space, here's a bit of space, so we're going to take the spaces up. Now hopefully you've enjoyed that little tour of our new garden, and thanks for watching as always, and like and subscribe and follow us and do all that good stuff. Thanks a million, much appreciated. Bye bye.